Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Bragg and this is A Choice Less Travelled, where I'm exploring different choices you can make to help you manage your mind, body and soul. And today we're talking about wild swimming, and I have Tara Kelsall on the podcast today. Tara is a life coach and a wild swimming coach, and she's passionate about encouraging people outside and into nature. She's particularly interested in supporting midlife women bring a little bit more wild into their everyday. So Tara, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you, Rachel. It's a delight to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You're welcome. So Tara, bringing a bit more wild into the everyday, what does that mean? How did you get into this?
Okay, that's a really good question, actually, because I think wild probably means different things to lots of different people.
Yeah.
To some people, that's quite, it's quite a big word. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, maybe, wild, what do you mean by that? So I think there are lots of other words that you can kind of interchange with wild. For me, joy, adventure, experience, connection. And in a way, you can just sort of interchange them depending on how you feel that day. So I think it's really, for me, a big part of what I'm doing and experiencing and what's happening for me is understanding that you can have adventure in a kind of everyday way.
Yeah.
You don't have to hike Kilimanjaro, which is obviously a brilliant thing to do. And if you want to do it, do it. But equally, if you just want to go on a really lovely walk in your local area and experience things a little bit differently, to me, that's an adventure. So I think that's what I'm trying to encourage, that we can all have more adventure, more connection with nature, and it can be in a really small way and take up a very small amount of time as well. Because I know for a lot of people, it's such a pressure, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
I'd love to do that, but I can't fit that in. I don't have time. Oh my God.
Yeah. I think we're all under a lot of time pressure at the moment, and that's the
Yeah.
big thing that people feel like, particularly with midlife women who've got families. There's a lot of demands on our time. So it was really fascinating going out with you and doing the one-to-one wild swimming with you. I definitely had a bit more va-va-voom for the rest of the day. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But I'd love to know, how did you get into wild swimming?
Okay, that's a great question. I think, like a lot of people that I meet, it was one of those things that I definitely did a lot as a kid. I grew up in a family that loved camping, and we'd get in rivers and things like that. Then I had, a little bit of a misspent teenage youth, and again that involved getting in rivers, and then I think I just really forgot about it. But then sort of middle period of my life and kids, and I really loved sort of hot weather and hot places. I was brought up in India, so people always used to say to me, "Oh, you've got thin blood. That's why you have to go to hot places." And I don't think that's medically correct, by the way. But so I was very much a person that loved hot baths, hot weather, hot swimming, hot holidays, all those kind of things. And I would swim in the sea, but a bit nervous at the sea, a bit of trepidation there. And then, in fact, we moved to Wiltshire, and we lived around Wiltshire. And I think at some point when my kids were really young, we had about far younger for the swimming club. And we went down there and had a picnic, which was really lovely, and sort of looked at the river. I might have even dabbled my toes in, I'm not really sure. Again, did nothing for about 10 years. And then when my husband actually decided, he was approaching one of those birthdays, and he was like, "Oh, I need an adventure. I'm going to get a wetsuit and I'm going to find some water to get in." So I went along as his kind of safety buddy, and I just had this really sort of one of those moments, like an epiphany, where I remember kind of looking down, thinking, "Wait, that looks really fun. Why didn't you just get on the bank in all my clothes?" So we went back the next day, and I got in, and that was probably about 7 years ago.
Wow.
I was completely hooked on that.
Yeah. So how did you feel when you first got in the water? What was it that made you think, I want to do this again?
Oh, that's really interesting, because first of all, I had to get over the fear and the terrors of all the things I was so scared of. We'll probably talk about that later as well, won't we? When I got out, I just instantly felt, wow, I've done something really brave and so different to my normal life, different to anything else. It was something I was really scared of doing. So then I just felt on top of the world after check me out, I've just done this. This is incredible. But also just, I think you said 5 of them. I just felt really like, oh, energized and happy, and what's going on, this is so great.
Yeah. And did you find that feeling lasted all day and then you just felt, I've just got to do this again?
Yeah, it really is like that. And yeah, and it took me a while to build up. And I think at least the first year, I swam sort of spring, summer into the early autumn, and then I just stopped because I didn't really realise at that point that you physically could swim in cold water. I didn't know anyone else that did it or anything, and that was really lovely. But that's when I realised, I'm missing something. It took me a really long time. It's because I'm not in the water anymore, and I just don't feel as good. So that was where I
Yeah.
thought, this has to be a regular thing for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. And what is it that you noticed ongoing in terms of your health benefits that made you realize when you stopped doing it that you needed to go back to it?
I think the most obvious thing for me is kind of mood. So I would find myself feeling sort of a bit irritable, or more irritable than normal. Actually, a slightly kind of stuffy, sort of fevery type feeling. And I would probably spend ages cycling it. Oh wait, maybe I'm hormonal. Oh, maybe I'm getting ill. Maybe, wait, it's because I haven't been in the water for ages. I think that's the most obvious tell, definitely. But generally, so many other things. I mean, it's really cooled me down with perimenopause. I'm sure we'll get to that later as well.
Yeah.
It's feeling much more balanced. All those ups and downs all the time, and just more joyful and cheerful and a generally nicer person.
That's always a benefit, isn't it, for ourselves and also the people around us.
Exactly.
It's interesting what you're saying about, the fear initially when you first went to get in, because I think that's something that a lot of us experience. And when we're children, we face into our fears a lot because we're doing new things all of the time. We're being introduced to loads of things, and then we get stuck in our little plateau, our comfort zone. And for a lot of people, particularly women, I would say, we don't ever push past those boundaries once we get past a certain age. And I think for me, doing wild swimming was it was a real opportunity for me to break the mold and step into something that I was scared of. So for everybody listening, Tara took me on a one-to-one session, and I had a fear of cold water and just a fear of being cold in general, because I'm always cold. In the summer, I have a 13 tog duvet with an extra blanket. I wear my onesie over my pajamas, and generally we'll have a hot water bottle. And this carries on throughout the year, and I just always feel shivery and always cold. So this was a really big deal for me. And I think that kind of facing into the fear is something that we just don't do that often. But I found it incredibly powerful.
You were really amazing, Rachel. It was, yeah. I know you were going to share more about that later, but yeah, it was a really great experience. But it is really incredible, and I think it really highlights there's something about being, particularly where I took you, that there are actually steps into the river. So it really clarifies that you're on this kind of threshold, but and you're kind of here with your fear, and if you can find something to just take that step down and be in the water, and even at that point it's only sort of ankle deep, but it's that amazing moment, isn't it? Like you're saying, you're literally stepping out of your comfort zone from the land to the water. It's really huge, isn't it? I mean, the first time I went, I was terrified. I made up so many stories, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's about the stories we're making up. And
Absolutely. And the stories we tell ourselves, that we build up all of these huge fears in our head. And actually, when we face into them, we can get over that really quickly. Because I found, in the weeks leading up, because I can't remember when it was we planned to do the swim, but it was a lot earlier than we ended up doing it. And then it got rained off, and it kept getting rained off, and I was kind of disappointed but also quite relieved at the same time, because it was quite cold when we were planning to do it, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think we started planning this back in sort of February or early March or something like that. So in a way it worked maybe quite well. But
Yeah, but it's slightly warmed up, but it's interesting because you go through so many stages. You've got the pre-thinking about it. So all of the thoughts that you're going through in your head is, what if I can't do it? Or what if, I get there and I just think, no, I'm not going to go for this. And then you kind of get there on the day, you get yourself there, and then there's the kit as well. So there's thinking about the water, the fact that it's going to be cold, what you need to take with you. And you were amazing at that in terms of giving me a full brief of everything that I needed to bring with me. So I brought my hot water bottle. You had one as well, which you kindly gave to me as well. The hot tea and all of that. And then it's kind of actually taking your clothes off and standing there in your swimming costume and thinking, oh gosh, like this is it. We are going to do this now. And then that's before you've even got to the water.
And that's the thing, isn't it? And like you're saying, so many layers to that, and so many layers, maybe particularly as midlife women, a lot of us don't have great relationships with our bodies. So I say, if anyone ever comes swimming with me and they actually arrive and we go out of the car, I say to them, actually, that's incredible. This is your first huge success point. If nothing else happens, exactly, you've gone through all the thinking it through. Shall I get in touch? Shall I just send that message or not? Okay, now I found where it is. I've had to find where it is. And I've driven it out on my own. And it's huge, isn't it? It's really huge. And like you said, at that point, you're sort of still in your clothes. Then you've got to get half naked in a field in front of other people.
That's quite a big deal because I was like, originally I was going to wear leggings. So I hadn't waxed my legs. So I thought, right, I'll wear leggings. That'll be fine. And then I thought through the concept of wearing leggings. And actually, that would be ridiculous because trying to get them off wet when I'm cold was not a good idea. So then I was like, no, I'm going to have to do it in my swimming costume, which means I'm going to have to do an emergency wax of my legs. So even, that added to the process. And these are things also that women do think about all of the time.
Yeah, definitely. I had a lovely comment from a woman once who said she'd done some last minute topiary. I don't think I'm saying that properly, but topiary. I just thought that was brilliant. I said, well, I'm very grateful to you, but I haven't bothered, so sorry about that.
It's fine, isn't it, to go for the full wild experience and let the spiky legs stick out and all of that.
Yeah, but I honestly say that's something that I found really beneficial, but it's taken me several years to get there. And when I first started going swimming, I was so self-conscious as well. And I don't know if this resonates for other women, but I had gone through a period of time, I think, when I had my children, where I'd take them to the beach and I'd have everything ready and it'd be really great. And, they'd be going to paddle in the sea. And I would be very much the sort of, we'll just, look after the bags and make sure everyone's okay. Because, no, I don't need, and a lot of that was self-consciousness, not wanting to actually be in a swimsuit, in public in front of everyone. So going to a river the first time and kind of getting changed. I mean, I did have quite a big town. There were lots of contortions and things. But over time, the whole experience has just helped me connect so much more with my body and really from that kind of, oh my goodness, what does it look like and where are the bits I don't like? To like, wow, this is amazing. I've got a body that will go in a river, goes in cold water, does all these kind of amazing things. And without really realising it, all the other stuff has sort of just dropped away now in a way. So I don't really worry as much if I'm hairy or I don't know, someone sees my bum when my towel comes out. It's just a bit like, oh well.
It's so true though. Like we do get so hung up on our bodies, I think, as we kind of get to that kind of 40 plus age. And for some people, even younger than that. And it's really sad. But I think, again, it goes back to the story we tell ourselves in our mind. If we tell ourselves that we need to have the perfect body, whatever that is, then, we can end up feeling like we're not hitting our own expectations. But actually, if we shift the story and realize how incredible our body is, then everything feels different. And like you say, the worries and the anxieties just melt away because you're so absorbed in something else that you're doing that shows you how incredible your body is and how amazing your body can feel, actually.
Yeah, that's really true. And I think because I'd never been a kind of sporty person, I'd never really experienced that in another, I'm sure there are loads of women out there that do all kinds of sports and probably get that feeling or change the story in that way. But I never, again, I mean, that's probably another story, isn't it, from my childhood, that you know, I'm not a sporty person. I don't do,
Yeah.
you know, group games or, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So I'd always sort of held that sort of belief about me. So yeah, so it's been sort of refreshing in many ways to be like, oh, yeah, I have got a sort of physical thing that I do, and you know, it might not be a sport, but it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love to talk about that process of getting into the water. So you were really amazing with me. So for everyone listening, I was genuinely really scared. And kind of where we went swimming, like Tara said, there was little steps going into the water. So we went in very, very gradually. It was slowly, slowly. And you were kind of the perfect guide for me in terms of bringing in some humor, a bit of distraction, and actually a healthy little encouraging push at the same time, but without me really noticing. And that was what was really amazing. But we did go in very, very slowly, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, and I mean that's for a number of reasons. The first one is safety, really. So there's all the kind of physiological changes that happen when you're going into water, and particularly when the cold water actually covers your core, your heart, really. Your heart rate and your blood pressure can increase slightly, and your breathing changes, and so you start to get that kind of, and you know, the gasp reflex, I think, and they call that the sort of cold water shock. So you know, really ideally never jump into cold water, or you know, sort of set up, and it's a bit counterintuitive because I think a lot of people think it's really cold, I just want to go for it, but you know,
Yeah.
there's danger at that moment, and if that was to be when you put your head under, you know, accidentally or deliberately, and then you inhale water. So it's really interesting because that having to be slow to be safe then opens you up to all these other amazing experiences. Because you're being slow, it becomes so kind of mindful, but not what's mindful actually, Rachel? Because you're not in your mind, you're completely experiencing your body. Is there a word that's mindful? I'll have to think about that.
I'm not sure. You're quite, I suppose you're just conscious, aren't you? You're present. You're kind of,
My goodness, I can feel like a bloody stabbing feeling on my legs. Oh my goodness, and I can feel this and now. And then there's that incredible bit of the difference between the bit that's under the water and the part of your body that isn't. And that's a
yes.
really fascinating feeling of I'm in this whole body, but there are some very different things going on, and I'm in sort of two halves. And you know, it's sorry, I've gone completely off topic. What were we talking about?
No,
Breathing slowly. Yes,
slowly.
that's what happens when you slow down in so many parts of life, but you're slowing down to get in for safety, and then it just really opens the experience up.
Yeah. It's funny though, because that general kind of creeping, it, you're right actually about the feeling of the body outside of the water and in the water. That kind of creeping, and you can feel the coldness creeping up and up and up. And this is probably the right time to talk about that frozen vagina. When it first hits, you're like, wow.
I'm so glad you're bringing that up as well, because I think it happens to many women. Not everyone wants to mention it, but I just say, yeah, let's get it out there. These are all the things that could happen. And it's actually okay.
It's
That
quite,
really helps you, doesn't it? If you know this is okay, I haven't
yeah.
suddenly, you know, it's isn't gone forever. It's unseen.
It's still there. It's okay. It's just a little bit colder, and then yeah, it kind of creeps up the body, and then it does really hit the nipples as well. I think
Yeah.
for women, like kind of these bits, it does feel quite cold, but it passes very quickly. And what I found was once the water was kind of up to here and I was sort of fully submerged apart from my head, it felt very comfortable actually. I don't know if my body had just gone completely numb, but it felt like a sense of euphoria, I would say, because we were, I was in and I was doing it, and I actually didn't feel cold once I was kind of fully submerged. That coldness, it felt cold as I was approaching and going in, but then once I was in and kind of moving around, actually I wouldn't say I felt cold.
That's really amazing, isn't it? Yeah, how that happens. And again, exactly, it could partly be because we're a bit numb because it is really cool. But I think a lot of it is like getting used to it, isn't it? And I went swimming with someone the other day, and it was really interesting because as part of that, the getting in slowly is also staying in until you almost pass the threshold into that moment, because
Mm.
they were saying to me, and also the weather had warmed up, so our skin was really warm and it felt very cold trying to get
Mm.
in. And they said, "Oh my goodness, if you hadn't been here with me, I would have probably got into my knees and realised it was really cold and got straight back out again."
Yeah.
There's really something about being able to just continue,
Mm.
and then you get that lovely moment, like you said, Rachel, where you think, "Oh, I'm in, I'm here, it's okay, I'm not dying, I don't even feel particularly cold." Or you might feel cold, but knowing that it's okay, I'm doing this, and I am safe, and that message going through your
Yeah.
system, isn't it, is this is okay for a certain period of time, obviously, with getting,
Yeah.
because I'm always monitoring and keeping it really short and making sure that.
And that's what I found really amazing about you, Tara, was that you were doing all of this with me in terms of encouraging me in, making me feel safe, but you also had an eye on the clock and you knew when it was time to get out, because I could have stayed in there a lot longer, I think. And that's, I think that helps with the safety of it, knowing that you are literally making the person feel like it's their experience and it's their journey, but at the same time you are controlling it in terms of a safety perspective and making sure that we get out at the right time. Because why is it important to not stay in too long?
Well, because your core body temperature can carry on dropping for up to an hour, I believe, after you've left
Right. Wow.
it. So it is a tricky call, because you probably could have stayed in longer,
Mm.
but what we never want to happen is that you then get out and you carry on getting colder and colder and colder,
Mm.
and then and there are, like everything else, hypothermia is a spectrum. So
Mm.
you can have very mild hypothermia where you might just feel a little bit clumsy, or
Mm.
your fingers are not agile enough, or you suddenly feel really tired. But going right up to being really life threatening.
Mm.
I think I always introduce people to water and get them out well before really, you necessarily, what am I trying to say? Get out early so the experience is always
Yeah.
positive and safe, and nobody's going to experience that. And then what I always encourage is you build on that, because only you know your own body. And that's the other thing that's tricky is, there's so much online about swimming, and there was for a long time a story about how you could stay in for 1 minute of time
Mm.
per 1 degree of temperature. But again, it just doesn't fit everyone. It's too
Mm.
sort of generic, and we're so individual, and depending on our body mass and distribution, how well we slept, what we've eaten, are we on the brink of getting ill and we don't know about it? Our sort of receptiveness to the cold changes every day. So
Yeah.
in a way, that's part of what I find really beautiful about this, because it forces you to get into a really great relationship with yourself,
Mm.
and really encourages that kind of boundary setting in a way as well, and being able to name that and say, actually, I need to get out now. I know,
Yeah.
especially if you're swimming with other people and in a group setting,
Mm.
it's really important, I think, to be able to name that and to know yourself, and to be able to, you know,
Yeah.
say, yeah, that's it. I'm done. Yeah. But then obviously when you get out, you want to sort of, get you wet things off, and get dried up, and sometimes do a thin dance, or depending on how cold it is, run around shrieking a lot. I think the louder I am, it warms me up. I don't know if that's.
It's interesting though about, I think, the kind of knowing your body and getting out for two reasons really, because I think the mind body connection is a lot of the work that I do in terms of helping people bring awareness to the messages that their body is giving them. And I think the wild swimming helps you with that, exactly as you were saying, in terms of knowing when it's right for you to get out. But then for the second thing, I think we did it one-to-one, but I could imagine within a group scenario. So I work with a lot of people who do a lot of people pleasing actually, and they're not comfortable giving their own opinion or standing on their own 2 feet. And actually, I can see how wild swimming in a group setting would help that, because you can't do what everybody else is doing. You need to know that when your time is up, you have to call it and you have to get out. regardless of whether everybody else is still in there or not. So I think that it could really help people in that sense as well, in terms of getting to know themselves, but also knowing, regardless of what everyone else is doing, what's right for you and when you should get out.
Yeah, no, I really agree with that. I think the proviso with that would be that you would kind of, if you weren't aware of that for yourself, you would need someone within the group, whether it was a social group or somebody you'd spoken to beforehand, that really named that and made that
Yeah.
really explicit. Because if it wasn't really explicit and kind of talked about before you got in, I think there still are people, aren't there, definitely, that would think, oh my goodness, no, look, they've forced someone off. I've got to go too. And then and that's the thing, isn't it? I love wild swimming. I'm so passionate about it. I do it all the time, but there are dangers. You've got to be realistic about it. And nobody wants a bad experience or a tragedy. So that's, for me,
Yeah.
I feel however nice and great I can kind of make everything. And, you kindly talked about humour and cups of tea and things like that. But actually, for me, it's like really safety. That is like
Yeah.
one for me, what I'm looking out for. And, the other stuff, in a way, hopefully it's there, but it's sort of incidental.
Yeah, I really benefited, I think, from having that first sort of one-to-one session with you. And I think a lot of people who've never done it before, I think, would really benefit from having a one-to-one session, just to help overcome those fears. And like you say, to let you know when it's time to get out and things like that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you were so lovely in that session. But I do agree, and I think it takes some of the pressure off, in a way, to have
Mm,
your first introduction on your own, because then you're not having to worry about, oh gosh, I'm spoiling your experience because I want to get out. We do that as women, don't we? We're so aware of everyone else's needs and
yeah.
always wanting to, put them first. And
Yes. Yeah.
lovely, because you can just really kind of go, okay, actually, this is mine. This is my
Mm,
time. I've booked this. There's nothing else happening. There's no other agenda. There's no one here, and there's something just about that that's really special.
mm.
And then you add in the water and
Yeah, I
sense of
felt
achievement.
like, yeah, definitely a sense of achievement. And I think, I genuinely felt like if I'd only put my toes in, you would have been really happy with that. You would have been like, that's great. That's where you are on your journey. And, you've done a great job today. I felt no expectation or pressure from you to get fully in the water if I didn't want to. And that made me want to get in even more. Because there was no pressure. And I think people need to understand that I can't speak for other swimming coaches, but for you, you're so supportive and just gently encouraging, but in a really, really lovely way.
Oh, thank you. I'm blushing now, but I'm so glad that you didn't feel pressure, and that makes me really happy, because I think that's really my intention, and there wouldn't be pressure, because I genuinely believe that. Like I said, going right back to the fact of just arriving, and I say to people, if today is the day where actually we need to just sit on a blanket at the edge of the river and look at it and talk about things, then that's amazing. You're here, you're
Mm,
still here, and you've never been here before, and
mm,
done that, and exactly standing on the step. And I always try to, it's interesting, isn't it? Because people might not know, but I try to really check in with them before we get in. Do you have a sense of when you leave? What do you want to have
mm,
done? And it is interesting, because you might assume that everyone says, "Oh well, I want to be in," and I want to have submerged, or, swum up the river or something like that. But actually, people are really great at saying, actually, I'd be really proud if I had 2 feet on the riverbed and
mm,
maybe the water was up to my waist. And
mm,
I've taken a couple of women in like that who just felt heroic, and they were,
mm, mm.
So yeah, again, and it's lovely, because it really percolates through to the whole rest of your life, I think, when you can
Yeah.
understand actually what is a success for me, isn't it? Because we can be really hard on ourselves. And something I find hard to do as well is stop and acknowledge, you know, a success, however small it is, instead of
Mm,
always looking to the next thing. Oh, what's next? What's next? And actually, it's just
yeah.
going, wow.
It's quite grounding, isn't it, to just take that time out and go, wow, I did that. I conquered something that I was scared of.
Yeah, and have a celebration as well, because lots of people say to me before they come, "Oh my goodness," it's usually relatives. "Oh my goodness, my mum's like sent me the watercolour about, how terrible it will be, and my sister said you're completely insane," and so people are arriving as well with a lot of, you know, messages that have been given to them, and so yeah, then when they kind of do it, there's a real euphoria and kind of like, wow,
Yeah.
yeah, I did
Did
that.
it. And I think what's also lovely about Utah is you've got that beautiful combination of not only the wild swimming, but also the coaching, training, and kind of bringing those two together. Because when you're dealing with people's fears and worries and concerns, having that coaching element is just the perfect support to doing something that you're scared of. And so, do you find that people have some quite kind of enlightening moments sometimes when they're doing it, or afterwards, or even before?
Yeah, that's such a good point, isn't it? And I think you're right. For me, it's actually really grounding having the coach training, I think, as well, to feel that confidence that I really can support people, because it's a very vulnerable thing to do, isn't it? You're half
Mm,
dressed and sort of in water, and people have got
mm,
stories. So yeah, I mean, an incredibly brave woman came to see me, and who had a really severe fear of water, and her partner was actually like a sort of underwater dive photographer. Their whole world was in kind of like diving underwater and things
mm,
like that. And she'd had a really terrifying incident as a teenager,
mm,
and had just never been able to go back in water. And somehow she decided she was ready, and she trusted me, and she came. And it was really incredible. It was really
mm.
incredible to be with her, just as she very slowly actually got in a river, up to her shoulders, and something she had
Wow.
been in water like that for, 20 years or something. It was really kind of mind blowing, actually.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? That you've given her that gift as well to enjoy the water again.
Yeah, but yeah, and I think people have that kind of, moment as well of sort of realizing, oh wow, do I can do that hard stuff, and just yeah, really realizing it. You can see them sort of really understanding it, in that
Yeah.
way, which is a really lovely thing to be
So I
part
think
of.
yeah. Sorry, go on.
I know that was it.
Okay. So I think what's nice is it's not just about the water actually, because you're conquering a fear, but it's that realization that you can conquer a fear, which then carries out and radiates out into the whole of the rest of your life. So it encourages you to focus on other things that you may have been putting off or been worried about. I mean, I know when I came back from the day, there was a few things that I'd been procrastinating on in my work life. And I came home and just smashed them all out in the day because I was like, no, I can do this. So it radiates out to every area of your life, actually. So it doesn't have to just be about the swimming. So I think for some people, they maybe will do it and love it and carry on, and that becomes part of their life. But I think for some people, it could be something that they've currently got a fear of that they then go and conquer. And they don't want to do wild swimming forever, but actually, just that process of conquering that fear unlocks so much in the rest of their life in terms of things that they then realize they can go on and do that they didn't think that they could.
Yeah, that's very true. And I suppose at this point we should acknowledge that being completely hooked on wall swimming isn't for everyone.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's like that. But you're exactly using it as a kind of experience to challenge your stories and mindsets and people, and then it's a very quick and obvious way to pass through that threshold, isn't it, of a fear
Absolutely.
criteria. And it's like, oh my goodness, in 1 hour, but all of that's happened. That's incredible, like you said. And then yeah, I mean, I'd be a bit sad if you never wanted to go past swimming ever again. Equally, you can really use that sort of transformative experience, exactly. And then you've got like a sort of evidence
Mm.
behind you to think, okay, I'm in this challenging situation. Hey, wait a minute, I've just remembered. I've just remembered. Oh my goodness. Right, this. I thought that. I was sure I was beaten by a shark, even though I was in a river in Wiltshire. Oh my goodness. And then it turned out to be none of those things at all. And that's so important, isn't it? Because usually, whatever you know, I do it all of the time, and it turns out to be none of those things.
Yeah.
All the things you made up, no, it's none of them. So
Yeah, exactly. I do think it's quite powerful. And then the feeling afterwards. So in terms of the benefits generally of wild swimming, so I talked before about how cold I always was, and what's been really interesting since the cold swimming, the wild swimming, was that and I know the weather has warmed up in the last few weeks, but we did this quite a while ago now, didn't we? And I definitely know that shiver that I felt like I was constantly experiencing just disappeared just from that one swim. And then I started I started jogging, and I came home and had a cold bath to kind of soak my legs, which I wouldn't have done had I not done the wild swimming, which really helped my muscles. And that kind of shiver, that just constant shiver that I felt like I was just always cold, just wasn't there anymore. And I don't know all the sort of physiological changes that happen in the body, but I've heard a lot about how it improves your circulation and those sorts of things. Are there any other benefits that people generally get from doing wild swimming?
yeah, I mean that is really amazing. Just to hear that, it's incredible, isn't it? So there are lots of benefits, and I'll just talk about them very generally because part of being a midlife perimenopausal woman means that I find it really hard to retain facts. If you need a lot of the sort of science, and there is so much kind of research going on at the moment, and so much
Yeah.
based stuff. I'm afraid you have to Google it yourself because
Yeah.
I can't actually remember it. But
That's absolutely fine.
loads of stuff around circulation, inflammation, and stress
Mm,
relieving. So there's this whole
mm,
thing, and I think it's called homeosis. No, so again, I can't retain it. But if you Google it,
yeah.
so the fact that you have a stress response to
Mm,
getting into the cold water, and the more of those that you have, the more it kind of levels out. So like we're talking about with the
mm,
fear, but in any other situation where you're kind of, you know, your stress hormones and things go up, actually they start to balance out across the board.
mm,
It's almost
mm.
like you have a little bit of stress in order to reduce stress. It's quite an interesting theory.
Yeah.
And again, in that way, sort of the whole mental health benefits, I think, and again,
Mm,
being outdoors, the whole sort of nature
mm,
connection part of it, you know, being connected with weather and, you know, seasons, I think,
mm,
as well. But yeah, and lots of research about the cold water as well.
mm,
So
mm. It's
I tend to
interesting.
go for a more sort of like experiential, felt senses thing, and I do read lots of this stuff online, but I just
I know
can't.
it's hard to retain. It's hard to retain it all. But what you're saying about being out in nature, I think, was also really powerful, because when we were in the water, I wasn't really looking around, and you said to me, just have a look around and see that you're out in nature and you're in the river. And I had a good look around. I was like, wow. And you do feel completely at one with nature because you're fully submerged in the water. And you've got all the beautiful trees, and we were in a lovely setting. So you had all the beautiful trees and everything around. And I think that contributed to the whole experience, which I think is very different to, what's become very popular now is people buying those ice baths and having them, on their front step or in the garden and kind of submerging in that. And there must be loads of health benefits of that because you get the benefit of the cold water. But there's something different about being in nature, being in a river, in the beautiful surroundings that I think you can't replicate in a pod.
Yeah, it's really good you brought that up in a way, isn't it? Because I think really in the last sort of year to 2 years, the whole kind of conversation has been completely taken over by cold water and
Mm,
ice bathing, hasn't it? And that's become incredibly popular and sort of well known and well talked about, and has a huge amount of benefits, obviously, as we
mm,
are talking about cold water. But actually, for me, the whole beauty and the joy of the wild swimming, the outdoor swimming, is
mm,
I'm outside. And I've always been a person who loves being outside anyway.
mm,
But like you said, that moment where you really realise, you know, you're in natural water
mm,
outside, you really understand very clearly that you are nature. You're not kind of
mm.
in it or looking at it or
Yeah.
admiring it over there. It's a very powerful thing. It's quite hard to describe, but I've even been in the river at some points and just had this very strong kind of feeling that came over me. I am the river. That
Yeah.
must be mad to some people, but it just arrived,
Yeah.
over me. And it's a really powerful thing, isn't it?
Mm.
And then you've got that, the waters are moving, you've got so many beautiful kind of metaphors for life, the flow, the obstructions, it always finds a way. It's just
Yeah.
so much. And then, like you said, because you're in a river and there are beautiful trees everywhere, you're having forest bathing at the same time.
Yeah.
It's just literally, the full experience. It really
Yeah. Because a
is.
lot of people have said to me, because people have tried doing cold showers is generally the first port of call that people go to. And they say, oh, I couldn't do wild swimming because I can't cope with cold showers. But I would say to that, it's fundamentally different. It's a very, very different experience. I'm not sure that many people particularly enjoy cold showers, but I don't enjoy a cold shower, and I did try it before we went wild swimming, and it's not that enjoyable. So I would say to anyone who's saying I couldn't do it because I don't like cold showers, this is a completely different experience. It feels very different.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, cold showers for me, I will do them because I can get a sort of, pep you up little feeling afterwards. But basically, it's very overwhelming. You've got water
Mm,
gushing out absolutely everywhere. It's really
yeah.
loud. It's very sort of overwhelming. It's, all your senses are up. Whereas when you're getting into a river, you have so much more sort of control over it as well,
Mm,
because
yeah, that's
you
true, actually. Yeah.
and you are immersing and you can stand completely still,
Mm,
go any deeper. So you have all of that agency over what's happening. And it's just completely different. It's just so hard to
mm,
describe. Even the feel of the water, people say to me, the water feels all kind of silky and soft. And I just thought, oh, it's a dirty river, it's going to be horrible. So there's so many surprises to all of it. But again, I think it's, if you are nervous, there's really something in that there isn't that, there's nothing kind of spraying over you or coming for you or at
mm,
you. It's very
mm,
much ease yourself in. It can be really gentle. Which
mm. So what would your advice be, do you think, to anybody who's sort of thinking, oh, I'd quite like to try this, but I'm just not sure? What would your advice be to someone feeling like that right now?
I think if you've already got to the point of thinking, I'd like to try this, but I'm not sure, then you should definitely try it. I think maybe it's good to do a bit of reading online. So there's a really great free website called the Outdoor Swimming Society.
Mm,
And they have amazing resources on there. They're completely like volunteer run, but they have little articles on everything, kit to wear or not to wear, how to
mm,
find a safe spot, what it's like to swim in the cold. So that's, it's kind of get yourself a bit informed,
mm,
find anyone else that is doing any kind of swimming, and never go on your own to
mm,
start with. Just
mm,
it's someone that you really trust. It could be a friend, it could be a group, it could be a coach. There are coaches in all sorts of different locations as well. I mean, I
mm,
happen to love river swimming and do my coach instructions there, but you can go to lakes, managed lakes. There are coaches by the sea. So wherever you live, whatever kind of
mm,
it might be. Yeah, I think it's well worth that. And if you don't want to get a coach or you can't afford it, definitely go with someone you really trust and have
mm,
read some information first, so you're aware of the
mm,
time to stay in the hypothermia. And also, it's natural water, so having an understanding of how it works, when it might be
mm,
dangerous, what kind of things to look out for. So when I meet people, just have a look at it and a bit of a talk about it. And I've spent years kind of getting used to the height, the current, the flow, the different
mm.
kind of weather conditions when we just are categorically not going in, those kind of
Yeah,
things.
because we had to cancel, didn't we? I think probably maybe
Yeah.
2 or 3 times we had to cancel because of the weather. So what is it that people should be looking for in terms of danger signs of when it's an absolute no, we're not going in there?
Yeah, so I mean, when rivers are in spate, that's what it's called. That's when they're really in flood, and you can see that very obviously because they're
Mm,
really turned up and brown and
mm,
moving incredibly fast. And you just know straight away, like, I'm not going to go there. The
mm,
trickier time is when we might have had some periods of rain, but the weather's really nice and it's running quite fast. A really kind of old school thing to do if you're at a river, first of all, is actually throw a stick in and watch the speed it
right.
travels through. And you can get a sense from that of kind of like, can I swim that fast? Does
Mm,
that look, comfortable to me? And on a kind of lovely, lazy river, it's just bobbing along. That's a good thing to do. There's also a great app. There's a free app called the River app that I use, and they
hmm.
use Environment Agency gauges at different points of.
Okay.
It took me a while to kind of understand what their numbers meant compared to what I could see at the river, but over time I've really built up a great understanding. So
Mm,
I can also look at the app from home now and be like, oh, no, definitely not today, kind of thing, because I know
mm.
how that would look. So yeah.
And one the other thing I want to ask you just is around kit. So I ended up doing it in my swimming costume with like a rash vest over the top. But is do you get the most benefit if your skin is exposed?
Yes, you do, and it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because a lot of people say to me, "Oh, is it cheating to wear a wetsuit?" And it absolutely isn't. So, my first thing I would say is, if you are going to be brave enough to come and try some wild swimming, then you wear everything that makes you feel good.
Mm,
Because also, if you start top to toe, you could have a hood, you could have a full wetsuit, gloves, boots, the whole thing. And if that makes the first experience enjoyable enough that you come back another time,
mm,
then it's great because you can gradually take things off as you go. Um, the most benefits you would get is the more of your skin is exposed,
mm,
obviously, and then your sort of the cold receptors and that. So that is true, yeah. But
mm,
equally, you can have a rash vest along,
mm.
because your legs are still out. You can also wear a swimsuit and have gloves. So a lot of people find their hands are quite sensitive.
Yeah,
Um,
the gloves were lovely actually because I borrowed your boots and your gloves, and that felt really nice because it did feel I was sort of holding my arms up like this. I remember to keep my sort of hands warm out before I finally put them in right at the last
yeah,
minute. And it did really help when everything was kind of going cold and the water was creeping. Excuse me. To feel like my hands were warm like this was
yeah.
actually a really nice feeling.
Yeah, it's true because you often see as well pictures of people sort of dipping in beautiful spaces doing this, and it looks like, oh my goodness, they're having a beautiful sort of yoga moment. But actually, the secret is their hands are just freezing, so they keep. But no, it's great, and I think some kind of water shoe,
Yeah.
absolutely as well. It's a game changer for confidence because a lot of people are
Yeah.
like, oh, what is under there? What am I going to be
Yeah,
touching?
and that's quite
So,
scary, I think. Quite
mm,
scary for a lot of people, and it's certainly something that I was thinking about in terms of what am I going to be standing on, because you don't actually know what's at the bottom of the river, and when you can't see through it,
yeah.
it is reassuring, I think, to have those shoes on.
It is, and it's also really good just in terms of safety as well, because obviously you never quite know what's down there.
Mm,
If there was to be an old can or broken glass or something like that. So,
yeah.
and they're incredibly cheap online. You can get them for as little as sort of £8 or something. So I'd always recommend some little kind of shoe. And then if you go into swimming in colder water, I think the ones I lent you were like sort of neoprene, quite
Mm,
chunky
mm,
ones. So they're really good for keeping. And again, fast. And the great thing is that you might think, oh, I'm going to look, I'm going to look really silly. But actually, people are wearing combinations of everything everywhere.
mm,
I was down at Farley Hungerford yesterday, and I saw every combination from wetsuit, long sleeve
yeah.
tops, gloves, no gloves, boots. There was someone in a bikini. I was like, okay, great, we've got the whole.
It literally was the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Well, we're running out of time, so I'd really just like to ask you the final question. If people want to work with you, Tara, what sort of things do you offer? I know you do the one-to-one swimming, you also do separate life coaching, you also do walks and swims. It would just be great if you could give people an overview of, what you do and how you can help people.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, Rachel. Yes, so I am based just outside Bradford-on-Avon and Bath, and I do one-to-one swimming instructions and small group swimming instructions
Mhm.
at Barley Hungerford, which are great. I also lead wild swimming walks in the local area, so that's a really lovely way to come out and meet new people, see the countryside, get the benefits of walking, and maybe get safely introduced to a new swim spot. You know,
Mm.
that thing about the first time, isn't it? It's lovely to have
Yeah.
the first time. And what I'm really always hoping is with the swim intros and walks is that I introduce you, help you feel really great, and then you just keep going. You know, that's the
Yeah.
yes, I'm also a life coach. I coach online, but my real passion is being outdoors. So I do most of my coaching sessions outside,
Mm.
and that there's a variety of locations, but generally that's just having the conversation that is a coaching conversation, but maybe on a walk. Sometimes we just get a blanket out and sit down somewhere lovely and, you know, have a cup of tea and have the conversation. But I've also started really incorporating the two over the
Yeah.
winter. So I also offer an extended session, which is a coaching conversation, and within that's a 90-minute session that also involves a supported dip, and we
Mm.
kind of integrate that so that stories and the fear and the threshold and the transformation is part of
Yeah.
what's
Lovely.
happening for that person and what's in conversation at that time. So yeah, so lots of sort of different options. Yeah, you can kind of dip your toe in, you know, to yeah, that's what I call my group. It's a bit of a cliche, but come and dip. There is actually one this Saturday.
Okay, there we go.
Information about me is I've just got one website and it's called wildswimmingwoman.com, and absolutely everything is on there. So.
Lovely. So it really is something for everybody. So if you're even thinking about giving it a go, get together a group of people, go and join in. For the people who are local listening to this, go and have a look at Tara's website, maybe join in some of her groups and give it a go. I would highly recommend it. And I would highly recommend Tara as well in terms of that one-to-one support, just as a one-off even, to get yourself into it or give it a go or conquer a fear that you don't think that you can. I'd really recommend it. I will put all of Tara's links to her website, etc., in the show notes so you can have a look at that. So all that's kind of left to say, Tara, is thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for the amazing one-to-one session that you did with me. And I look forward to coming to one of your group sessions at some point, definitely.
Oh, thank you so much, Rachel. It's been such a pleasure to chat to you, and I'm glad you said that because I was going to finish by saying I hope I will see you in the river very soon.
Yes, you definitely will. You absolutely definitely will. So thank you very much for your time today. Take care, and I will see you
Fantastic.
soon.
Thank you.